behind walls and gates and they have guards all over the place. Me too. Because I want to be safe and I want to make America safe, if you don't mind.
Beto O'Rourke taking part in a dueling march and rally against President Trump.
Safe, not because of walls, but in spite of walls.
I unequivocally apologize. That from freshman Democrat Congresswoman Ilhan Omar after swift backlash.
It sort of saddens me that a member of Congress who has the platform to really change the world, and when she apologized, she said, but.
A winter storm slamming the U.S. from the northwest all the way to the northeast.
We have an ice storm warning yet again for the Chicago area. Definitely delays all day today across the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, in towards the northeast.
Welcome, everybody. We've heard there's a big storm coming. Schools have already been adjourned through portions of the Northeast. And according to my weather people, my app, snow will start here in 1 hour and 19 minutes.
No way, really?
All right.
That's
hey, listen.
Exciting. It's going to be behind us.
Right. By the way, it's February, and we can handle it. Right?
Yeah, we can
handle it. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Amy Klobuchar, it's still, she got buried almost live on television. She didn't even wear gloves on Sunday.
She's used to it.
Yeah.
She's from Minnesota, land of 10,000 frozen lakes.
Yes.
Right about now. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us today. We got some big news to start this out.
Lawmakers reached a deal. We begin with this. It's a Fox News alert. An agreement has been reached in principle to avoid a second government shutdown.
All right, now the clock is ticking for lawmakers to hammer out the details, and we do not know officially what the president thinks of this.
We know some of the details, and Griff Jenkins joins us live from Washington with breaking developments. Griff, officially, they haven't told us what's in it, but a number of lawmakers on both sides have blabbed a little bit.
That's right. Well, good morning, guys. We don't know what's in it because it's in principle. Now, that suggests the details are not fully clear. And remember, the devil is in the details, right? But one thing is clear, and that is no one wants another government shutdown. So these four top negotiators found some common ground.
We reached an agreement in principle between us.
That we were able to work together, bipartisan way, come to an agreement, and our staffs are just working out the details.
So here's what's in it as far as we know. $1.375 billion for 55 new miles of border barrier on the Rio Grande Valley. Maybe some semantics at play here because Democrat sources tell Fox News it's not a wall. But the agreement allows the Border Patrol to use any currently deployed design, including steel slats, to build it. Then there's this. Democrats are claiming a 17% decrease in ICE detention beds, reducing the number from 49,000 beds currently down to just over 40,000. There may be some wiggle room, though. We're told DHS funding elsewhere could give them the authority for additional beds in the event of a surge on the border. The big question now is whether President Trump will sign it.
Well, I can tell you that a lot of things have changed, and we'll see what happens. I can't go into the exact deal. I just heard it very quickly.
So we expect maybe some of the details to actually formally start coming out today. Mostly this could take shape Wednesday, but there's a lot of ifs there and a lot of points for contention, guys.
There are indeed. All right, Griff, thank you very much. The big question is, look, whatever it is, about $1.4 billion for 55 miles of fences. The president had wanted 200. So what do conservatives think about it? In the Washington Post this morning, Mark Meadows is quoted, and then he tweeted this. He's one of the most conservative members of Congress. He said, this conference agreement is hardly a serious attempt to secure our border or stop the flow of illegal immigration. It kicks the can down the road yet again, failing to address the critical priorities outlined by Border Patrol chiefs. Congress is not doing its job.
The president's chief of staff has said he can also get money elsewhere. So maybe this is a start. Maybe the president would say, OK, I'll agree to this, but I'm going to get money elsewhere. He said we definitely are going to build the wall. He said that in the rally yesterday. And he said he's not going to support he's not going to ever sign a bill that forces the mass release of violent criminals. Now, Senator Richard Shelby from Alabama, Republican from Alabama, said when he was asked, will the president approve it? He said, we think so and we hope so.
All right. So on the beds, there's going to be an immediate word is, okay, 70% decrease, but if you look at the flexibility there, the president could get his requested level of 52,000 beds with very little trouble, and there's already some maneuverability that was out yesterday from Mick Mulvaney, as Ainsley mentioned. The $1.375 billion, a lot less than 5.7. However, you get 55 miles. It's taken them a year and a half just to start on 2017. Not that they're lazy, but because contracts have to be handed out, equipment's got to be acquired, and they got to get the plans. So they're starting this week from 2017. Now, they're starting 55 miles. Barack Obama built 133 miles. George Bush did 155 miles. This would get them up to about 110, and they're not going to slow down. So even if the money was all there and they got $20 billion, they probably couldn't have picked up the pace.
Right.
And Steve, and Ainsley, this is only 7 months.
But keep in mind, Democrats didn't want him to build 1 mile.
Yeah.
See,
So this is a big step, right?
I think the president's probably going to say, you know what, I'm going to take that number right there, $1.4 billion for 55 miles of border wall, and then I bet he's got something up his sleeve. Because when last night, and Ainsley, you just alluded to this, he said that wall's going to be built. Listen to this.
We're building the wall anyway. Illegal immigration hurts all Americans, including millions of legal immigrants, by driving down wages, draining public resources, and claiming countless innocent lives. The biggest proponents of open borders are rich liberals and wealthy donors. These are hypocrites who oppose security for you while living their entire lives. I do too, to be honest with you. I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I also live behind walls, okay? They live behind walls and gates, and they have guards all over the place. Me too, because I want to be safe, and I want to make America safe, if you don't mind. So security should not belong only to the rich and to the powerful. Safety is the birthright of every American, which is why we must finish the wall.
And those are the signs seen all across the building. That's the new theme, finish the wall.
Especially in El Paso.
Right. And the one thing before we moved on, and specifically on this deal, remember, when that deal came out, Nancy Pelosi made the offer. Yeah, you could have $1.3 billion, but not 1 cent for the wall. You may be able to repair some fence. Now, he said only the Normandy fence, which are those X's that stop vehicles, which is basically like a split rail fence for vehicles. Now, this can be used for whatever he wanted. And the bollard fence, which is preferred by the Border Patrol, because it can see through it, it can be there. So there's easy, my sense is that both sides saw the cliff of a shutdown. They did not want to jump. And I think it's also how you characterize this. If you're going to be saying, look what we made him do or her do, then people are going to get bent out of shape, donors are going to react, and then we're going to be back with no more compromises on anything ever.
Well, I think the president forced the issue with government shutdown, and now he sees some money. He's going to take that money. He's going to go along with the deal. And I don't think he's going to declare a national emergency. But like I said, I don't know what his plan C is, but I think he's got another way to legally reprogram some money. Keep in mind, the whole worry about him declaring a national emergency would be that the Democrats would haul him into court. But the commander-in-chief has, with the courts, has broad authority to protect the nation. And so I think his attorneys could make a really good argument. We need the wall, because we've heard so many people talk about the crisis.
To Brian's point, if they're just building what they passed in 2017, this is a start. This will fund the government through September, and then maybe you can get another, 55 miles and another $1 billion plus for the next phase. But if they're just working on 2017, that's an excellent point. He also said last night, which I thought was interesting, he said, I choose you. My people were trying to tell me about this agreement that the lawmakers had come to terms with. And I didn't want to hear all the details because I was supposed to be out here on stage talking to you, my people from Texas. He said, I choose you. I'll learn about the details after the rally.
Meanwhile, the president's theme last night was he laid out the groundwork for 2020. Not into socialism, the Green Deal a disaster, and late-term abortion. Late-term abortion's got to stop immediately. One party's for it, one party isn't.
Well, America's against it, and we're going to show folks a little a poll.
Even pro-choicers.
Yeah, it's a YouGov poll that came out. 80% of the country is against it. We're going to tell you more about that a little later on, but in the meantime, 6:10 here in New York City, And Jillian joins us with some news.
And that's right. Good morning. Following a number of stories, starting with this. Today, one of the women accusing Virginia's lieutenant governor of sexual assault will speak out publicly. Dr. Vanessa Tyson will be part of a panel titled Betrayal and Courage in the Age of Me Too at Stanford University tonight. This happening as several members of Justin Fairfax's staff resign over the allegations against him. Fairfax has denied the allegations and called for an FBI investigation into them. A woman convicted of texting her boyfriend and encouraging him to commit suicide is now in jail. A judge ordering Michelle Carter to begin her 15-month prison sentence days after a state court upheld her involuntary manslaughter conviction from 2017. Carter was found guilty of persuading Conrad Roy to kill himself when she was 17 years old in 2014. Her lawyers plan to appeal to the Supreme Court. Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan arrives in Baghdad on an unannounced trip overnight. He will meet with the country's prime minister and American military commanders. The leaders will discuss the future of U.S. troops in Iraq. The U.S. has 5,200 troops in Iraq right now. President Trump says service members are needed there to watch Iran. And how about this? An extremely rare letter written by George Washington could be yours. The first president writing this letter to the Speaker of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, praising God for the ratification of the Constitution in the year 1788. The letter is being sold at a Pennsylvania auction house with a current price of $140,000. Let's look at your headlines. Pretty cool, huh?
That is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Cool. First president.
Because George Washington's not writing much anymore, so this is probably going to only appreciate.
I'm surprised it's not going for more than that, actually.
Right?
Well, you know, Brian's book had all the information about it, so why pay $140,000 to get Brian's
I was
book?
on the plane. I was on the plane on Sunday, and the guy sitting in the very front row had your book in the back of the pocket.
He must have been a really bright guy. Fantastic.
He was nice. He came over and offered candy to Hayden. And I was like, thank you. I'm not doing candy today, but it was nice.
By the way, today is Abraham Lincoln's birthday.
Is it? Yeah, you're right. You're right.
He was born on this date in 1809.
And by the way, if I could steal Ainsley's line, Abraham, I'm glad you were born. All right?
Yes.
There you go.
Very glad he was born.
Straight ahead. While President Trump was rallying in El Paso, Beto O'Rourke was holding his own march 1 mile away.
Do not save lives. Walls end lives.
Some Democrats are calling him the new Obama, but is this really an apt comparison? We break down his record.
Plus, Chris Pratt firing back at Ellen Page after she criticized his church's values. His inspiring response coming up.
We know that walls do not save lives. Walls end lives.
Even though Beto O'Rourke lost the Texas Senate seat to Ted Cruz back in November, he is still one of the Democrats' rising stars. He returned to the spotlight last night in El Paso with a march and rally not far from where President Trump was having a rally. Here to weigh in, Chris Wilson, Republican strategist and former campaign pollster for Senator Ted Cruz of the great state of Texas. Chris, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve.
Some have drawn comparisons between Beto O'Rourke and Barack Obama. Are there any comparisons?
Well, I think it's probably more apropos than you might think, but maybe not in the way that Democrats would like it to be apropos. And the fact is that really Barack Obama in the state Senate in Illinois was someone who was a backbencher, really never accomplished anything, voted present more than he actually voted yes or no. And Beto O'Rourke, before he ran against Ted Cruz, had passed a total of 3 bills while he was in Congress for a few terms. He was a backbench member of Congress, and the most significant of those was renaming a courthouse. So both of these people were not ones who built a reputation off of a sustained time of accomplishment or series of accomplishments. They're people who, through one single political event, with Obama giving a speech to the DNC, for Beto O'Rourke running against Ted Cruz, really elevated themselves to national consciousness. Now, what's curious to me about O'Rourke is that you have Democrats rallying around him over losing a race. And similar to, you saw this with Stacey Abrams giving the response to Donald Trump. And if I was a Democrat who won a race in 2018, I might be a little bit irritated that you have so many Democrats who lost being elevated to the head of the party.
So what do you make of the fact that they had dueling rallies yesterday, and we're looking at some of the images from El Paso? That was a mile or so away from the Trump event. I know that President Trump got multiples more people in attendance to his, but nonetheless, 1,000 or 2,000, that's pretty good for him, isn't it?
It's his hometown, Steve. I have to tell you, I think looking at this, I've sat in enough meetings trying to advance events on presidential campaigns that you really stress over how many people are going to turn out and what the look of it is. And I got to tell you, there are probably a lot of Democrat advance people out of work this week. I mean, you had Elizabeth Warren, people were walking off the stage behind her. You had Amy Klobuchar, who's wanting to do a climate change, global warming rally, and it breaks out in snow. And then you have Beto O'Rourke at his hometown, and he can't get more than a few hundred, maybe a couple thousand people to turn out for him. And I think that's really a bad look for someone. If you're going to choose to do something in your hometown and you're going to try and compete with someone else, a person you maybe want to run against in the next couple of years, you got to have a big crowd turnout. And he just didn't achieve that.
So, Chris, how do you explain why he has energized so many Democrats?
Well, hey, look, I've worked for Ted Cruz for a long time, and I have to say Ted Cruz does a good job of energizing Democrats, and probably just about anybody could have been on that. It'll be interesting to see how Beto O'Rourke is able to do raising money running against Elizabeth Warren or particularly Bernie Sanders. And raising money from the New York and Hollywood sources that funded his campaign for Senate against Ted Cruz. Because I think more of those people were jumping in to Beto O'Rourke as an opponent to Ted Cruz and not necessarily Beto O'Rourke as a person. Because, again, what I said, he's never accomplished anything. And that's got to matter at some point.
If he ran, no doubt that would be the meme on the other side. Chris Wilson joined us from OK City. Thank you very much for joining us live.
You bet. Thank you, Steve.
All right. It's exactly 6:20 here in New York. New York and Virginia both pushing to ease restrictions on late-term abortions. But is that what pro-choice Americans want? A brand new survey that is going to shock you is coming up next. Plus, an act of patriotism caught on camera. The story behind this photo that will make you proud to be an American. Wait till you hear this story.
All right, some quick headlines now. Nevada lawmakers will debate a proposal to require background checks for private gun sales and transfers. The state Senate leader says they could vote on it as early as tomorrow. If passed, the bill requires sales to be run past a licensed dealer. It could go into effect next year. And talks between union and school district officials expected in Denver, Colorado today as teachers walk off the job for a second straight day.
Hey, hey! Whoa, whoa! These unfair wages got to go! Hey, hey!
Teachers are demanding higher base pay. It's their first strike in 25 years. Now here's Ainsley.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Multiple states across the United States are making the push for legalizing late-term abortions. But is that really what you, as an American, really wants, including those who are pro-choice? A new poll finds that 80% of all Americans, oppose late-term abortions. And guess what? Look at that. 68% of pro-choice Americans oppose it. Here to react, Jason and David Benham, serial entrepreneurs and authors of the new book, Bold and Broken, Becoming the Bridge between heaven and earth. So good to see you guys. Thank y'all for being on with us again. Congratulations on the new book. We'll get to that, but we wanted to bring you on because y'all had this TV show. You talk about your faith openly. You ended up losing that show because of it and have now written this amazing book. What are your thoughts about this? When you hear that 2/3 of even pro-choicers are against this, basically, why would states want to legalize this?
Well, there's a couple of things going on. First, this isn't a political battle. This is a spiritual, moral battle. So it crosses political lines. And what happens in this radical revolution in morality in America today, the ceiling always becomes the floor. It just constantly wants more and more and more. And we're watching it expand. And it reminds me of a quote by Edmund Burke: the only thing necessary for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do nothing. But here's what's interesting. The science is finally catching up to the Bible. The Bible is clear that an unborn child is a human being in a mother's womb. But now we have science. So you see all these statistics coming out that these millennials and the newer generations of even pro-choice people are saying, whoa, hold on a second. We're looking at these 4D ultrasounds. We're seeing that this is a human being. Those are fingers. Those are eyes. That's a nose. And when Planned Parenthood is exposed for the culture of death it is pushing on our country, folks are beginning to shrink back.
By the way, this survey, it's a YouGov Americans United for Life. They surveyed 1,145 American adults. We were talking during the commercial break. Y'all have 9 kids between the two of you. You live on the same street in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm sure you have so much fun. So when you hear the comments from this governor from Virginia, let me play these comments. I'm sure you've heard it. Most Americans have. But let me just remind you of what he said, and I'll get your reaction.
The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother.
So, Jason, what are your thoughts about that?
It's the culture of death. How could a person who's in leadership say something like that and people not be outraged? But this is exactly why we wrote our book. Because it should cause you to want to rise up. And we're telling people now is the time to stand boldly. But you have to do it right. Because there's ditches on both sides. See, boldness apart from brokenness makes you a bully.
Well,
Go ahead.
And that's an excellent point. Why would these governors want to push this? And why would these states, there are 10 different states, we'll put up the map, that are really pushing this. Why would they want to push this if even 2/3 of pro-choicers are against this?
Well, they think that, this is a culture of death. This is a spiritual battle. So sometimes it defies logic. When my kids are asking, how could he say something like that? That's infanticide. I mean, this is craziness. It defies logic. But they really believe with the abortion lobby and Planned Parenthood that history is on their side, that the political momentum is on their side, and that is just absolutely wrong. But the issue is, in Scripture it teaches, let us not love it with just words and speech, but in truth and in actions. So those that are pro-life, even those that are pro-choice that are against this, need to speak, need to stand strong, and don't worry about the thought mafia and those that want to bully you and intimidate you into silence. You have to speak, and you have to get involved and be pro-life, because it's one thing to be against abortion, but it's another thing to be pro-life.
I want to get to y'all's book.
This
Jason.
is our time, right? This is why we're here, because it's our time to stand strong. I mean, when you're standing strong for what you really believe in, you're really living. And that's, again, why we wrote that book. But that's why I want to get back to there are ditches on both sides of the road, because you can stand so boldly but not be in a spirit of brokenness, which we would say is submission to God and a spirit of humility, where you love people, you just don't love all ideas. See, boldness with brokenness makes you a bridge between heaven and earth where God can connect with people. But on the other side, and this is where a lot of Christians are today, they're broken, they're submitted to God, but they're not standing bold. That makes you a bystander. So you're a bully on one side or a bystander on the other. And David and I are saying now is the time for us to get in the middle and be that bridge where we stand boldly on a foundation of brokenness, and you will become that bridge between heaven and earth. This is our time to stand strong, and stuff like this that's going on in Virginia and New York, it just defines the context for us to take that stand.
Thank you so much, guys. God bless you both. It's called Bold and Broken. You can pick it up on Amazon. God bless.
Thank you.
President Trump sending a message to Ilhan Omar after the Congresswoman's anti-Semitic comments, her new statement that is sparking more controversy this morning. Plus, from firefighters to police to border security, is there a shortage of Americans signing up to serve? Our first responders panel is here to discuss that coming up next. But first, happy birthday to Bill Russell. The NBA Hall of Famer turns 85 years old today.
Is going viral this morning.
That's so sweet. A fire chaplain in North Carolina says the kids put their hands over their hearts and said the Pledge of Allegiance when they saw the fire department raising the flag. It's been shared on Facebook more than 4,000 times.
Very, very nice. Glad they did that so we could salute them on this Tuesday morning.
That's right.
All right, Brian?
All right, okay, let's get started. A firefighter shortage is happening in Pennsylvania big time, forcing the state into a public safety crisis. Since the 1970s, the numbers of volunteer firefighters in the state has declined by 88%. And a new report warns that other areas could face a similar problem. This comes as the Border Patrol struggles to recruit and now keep agents. So how can we get Americans to serve their communities? Our panel here to discuss it. Former Westchester County Police Sergeant Steve Cardian is here. Steve, welcome back. Spokesperson of the Firemen Association of the State of New York, Robert Leonard, is here. And former ICE Supervisor Jason Piccolo. All right, Jason, first off, I know you're more Border Patrol, but in terms of fire department, what's going on?
It's tough to get people to come out here and serve right now, especially you have these abolish ICE movements, you have abolish police movements. It's just a tough situation to get people to volunteer.
What's changed?
Changes have been in economics and socioeconomic factors. There are two-income families, husband and wife both work. The guy works 2 jobs, the wife works 2 jobs. You work further from home. You commute 30, 40 miles to work when you lived in town. You drove the ice truck, you parked it, went to the fire call, and came back. So things have changed a lot.
Steve, I think also a lot of it has to do with advertising. I think the first time I saw Volunteers Wanted was about 2 months ago. I saw it on an electronic scoreboard. You know, we need people. I just thought you guys were fully staffed.
Now, volunteering is one of the best things you could do to give back to your community. And what we see is that now this has changed. They're doing it for self-need. They're not doing it for self-need. They're doing it because they have hefty college loans. They've got 2-income families, and they have other interests. They're interested in sports. We don't have the time to do this anymore. The internet has become a big tool that has diminished volunteerism.
I mean, you need a campaign almost like the Army does, where they give you the image award, you know, the image idea of what it means, Jason?
Well, you know, what happens is a lot of times people go to the border and they get border burnout after 3 to 5 years. How are you going to sell that to someone? These are remote areas. You're not going to be I was lucky enough to go to San Diego. But what happens if you go to one of these small areas like Ajo, Arizona?
Well, McAllen. Yeah, McAllen. And nothing wrong with small towns, but there's not a lot going on. Robert, the other thing is, too, they're being run down politically, correct?
Well, the volunteer fire service is kind of unique. We serve everybody.
Right.
We don't have some of the challenges law enforcement has, but our challenge is education. You referred to it before, that digital sign you saw, being on Facebook and internet. It's educating people you can volunteer and serve your community, and despite political factors, volunteers aren't paid. Our budgets aren't as controlled as, say, the paid staff at police departments.
Right, and Steve, the other thing, so we know about the academies with cops. We know now about volunteer firefighters. We know Border Patrol. You know what I fear is next, ICE. Because we're so polarized, ICE, you're putting your life on the line on a regular basis. 9 out of every 10 pickups are criminals. So you're putting, and then you're hearing derision, people protesting outside your office?
Well, Brian, I've said for 100 years, if you tie law enforcement's hands, if you don't give them the public and the administrative support that they need, they're going to shut down. You're not going to get the people that you really want to attract. You're going to lose 10% of the cops do 90% of the work. They're going to shut down. They're going to do less work because they don't want to get jammed up and lose their salary to protect their family.
And Jason, too, when it comes to the families hear it. Oh, your dad, your husband, oh, he's in ICE. He's one of those people, anti-immigrant, because they've been labeled like that by the Democratic Party in many cases.
Yeah, you're finding divisions within families now. You might have someone that leans a little bit to the left who has a brother that's an ICE agent who's, hey, you know what, how can you possibly go out there and arrest these innocents?
Right. Robert, lastly, just give a pitch for volunteer firefighters.
Volunteer firefighters, there are about 800,000 in the country right now. There were about 900,000 30 years ago. We've lost over 10% of our population. The call volume's gone up 3 times. We need more people to kind of help.
What's great about it?
What's great about it, you serve your community. You are out there in the community with your neighbors. I go to my own neighbors' homes and they have a problem, and I help solve the problem. So it's a really good feeling.
You're also reviving people. You're
Absolutely. We do
fire.
emergency medical services. We do firefighting. We do rescue. We are a training ground for future careers in firefighting and EMS that can lead to law enforcement careers and federal careers. So we think it's an important thing to do to volunteer.
It was important you guys came out. Thanks so much for your message.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, let's go upstairs where we've sequestered Jillian to tell us what's going on in the news.
Good stuff. Thank you, Brian. Let's start with this. President Trump says Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, quote, should be ashamed of herself. He's slamming the Minnesota Democrat for accusing a lobbying group of paying members of Congress to support Israel. Omar has apologized, saying, quote, my intention is never to offend my constituents or Jewish Americans as a whole. But in that same statement, she says, quote, I reaffirm the problematic role of lobbyists in our politics, whether it be AIPAC, the NRA, or the fossil fuel industry. A semi-truck slams into a police cruiser. Look at that, after speeding through a red light. The terrifying moments caught on camera in Wisconsin. The officer was initially trapped inside his vehicle, but somehow managed to escape uninjured, thankfully. The speeding driver was cited for driving too fast for the wintry weather conditions. Officers sharing these photos, urging drivers to slow down. Katy Perry brand shoes are being pulled off the shelves after critics pointed out the resemblance to blackface. The slip-on loafers and block heel sandals featured 2 eyes, a nose, and red lips on a black shoe. Beige and gold versions were also available as part of a collection reportedly meant as a nod to modern art. Perry tells The Hollywood Reporter, quote, our intention was never to inflict any pain. Chris Pratt responding to actress Ellen Page after she called him out for attending a church she claims is anti-LGBTQ. Pratt posting on Instagram, quote, nothing could be further from the truth. I go to a church that opens their doors to absolutely everyone. The Guardians of the Galaxy star attends Zoe Church. He says that community helped him get through his divorce from Anna Faris. Let's look at your headlines. I'll send it down to you guys.
Right. Thank you very much, Jillian.
Arnold's got his back anyway.
Good to know. Arnold Schwarzenegger's daughter. All right, the winter storm wreaking havoc across the Midwest, closing in on the Northeast.
That's right. The snowy and icy mess causing massive pileups across much of the Great Lakes and Wisconsin.
We asked Janice Dean to track this system, and she has, with her system.
Oh, yes, it is happening. Really from the Northwest across the upper Midwest in towards the Northeast. They already are canceling schools across Long Island and parts of upstate New York. Let's take a look at the maps real quick, and I will show you the track of the storm. Even though it's not going to perhaps produce a lot of snow along the coast, it is going to give the threat for ice, and that's why they're getting ahead of it, and they are canceling schools in and around the Northeast. Where we see that pink on the map, we have a freezing rain and ice storm warning for parts of Chicago into towards Toledo. Wouldn't be surprised to see ice storm advisories up towards maybe New York City, in towards Long Island and Connecticut over the next couple of hours. Because even though this is not going to be a blockbuster winter storm producing a lot of snow, the ice is what is going to be very concerning, that could triple or rather cripple travel, and that's the concern. So there are your snowfall forecasts. I don't really want you to really pay close attention to them because it's the icing that will make the headlines. And then across the Northwest, another storm system moving in there, bringing more mountain snow and coastal rain. So busy day across the country. We'll keep you posted here in the Northeast. I expect some snow probably within the next hour around Fox Square. Back inside.
I think that's probably right. And Janice, I'm looking at one of the local websites, and there it looks like hundreds of schools.
Yes, absolutely.
The already canceled.
They want to get ahead of that ice.
Yep. But if you're a kid, study at home. Do you have your books with you?
Why bother? It's snow day.
Oh.
All right. Thanks, JD. Meanwhile, what are voters in El Paso, Texas, saying about President Trump and Beto O'Rourke's dueling rallies last night? Todd Pyro, as you can see right there, is it a diner in El Paso? We're going to check in with him coming up next.
Plus, the liberal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals delivering a win for President Trump on the wall. How significant is the ruling? We woke the judge up, and he's going to walk here as I put it on camera. There you go.
The notoriously liberal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals out west actually has sided with the Trump administration, pinch me, in a case challenging its, Judge, I was just kidding, in challenging its use of waivers to bypass environmental regulations in constructing a border wall.
Well, here to break it all down, what this exactly means for the Trump administration and moving forward is Fox News senior judicial analyst and host of Liberty File on Fox Nation, Judge Andrew Napolitano.
Good morning. So, shockingly, this is not a part of the border wall to be built under the Trump administration. This was authorized under the Obama administration.
Right.
And the statute that authorizes it said if environmental regulations would impede or prevent the construction of the wall, it's a relatively small piece, it's not what President Trump wants to build, that the Secretary of Homeland Security, currently a Trump appointee, Secretary Nielsen, can waive the environmental regulations. She waived them. The environmentalists went to court. A federal judge enjoined her. Yesterday, the Ninth Circuit lifted the injunction and said, we don't have anything to do with whether or not the wall should be built. The Congress authorized it 3 years ago. Does she have the authority to waive the regulations? Answer, yes. So it is surprising, not that this is the outcome, because the law is pretty standard. It's surprising that this is the outcome in the Ninth Circuit, where it does appear as though judges appointed by presidents other than Donald Trump have done everything that they can to stymie him.
And I know there's some positions open, and President Trump is looking to put those judges into the Ninth District. Do you know where that's at?
Yes, I do know where it's at, and I'm not exactly crazy about it because the White House has decided to cooperate with the two senators from California, which means you're not going to get people that are exactly Trumpians on the court.
All right.
Listen, they don't have the authority to stop it, but they have the authority to delay and frustrate it.
Speaking of delay, it sounds like Michael Cohen, who used to be the president's attorney, fixer guy, he has agreed, yep, I'm going to come down, I'm going to talk to Congress, I'm going to testify away. He has now canceled for a third time.
This, he must be getting cold feet. I mean, I can't.
He's had surgery?
Shoulder surgery.
We didn't know about the surgery. He had the surgery, and the doctors have said, you know, he's got to rest. He is going away on March 6th. I bet your bottom dollar that is not going to be